They should have round seat post, two-piece bar and stem, and it should take no longer than 40 seconds to change the height of your handlebars.
Welcome to Cycling Demystified, brought to you by Foundation Bike Fit and Frequency Cycle Works, the podcast where we help you take your cycling to the next level by sharing the knowledge from experienced bike fitters, mechanics, and the hidden players within the bike industry.
Welcome back to the podcast, boys. It is 2025, and this is the first podcast of the new year.
I feel like we should have like party poppers or something.
Woo. Oh, we're not sophisticated enough to get like sound effects yet on our on the podcast.
There's someone there.
I know, but it means we've got to figure out how to do it. So anyway,
What we need
Nobody needs to
is,
learn.
remember those like Yamaha keyboards you had in school, and no one would just like play anything. There'd just be like someone at the back going, DJ,
Yeah.
DJ. We need one of those for sound effects.
Anyway, we thought we'd start with a good one, and I think this year is going to be an interesting year. I think things are going to change, and there is a trend, I think, emerging, which I hope will stick, which is that bikes are becoming more versatile, and I wonder if riders will start to choose the more versatile, and I'm talking more about road bikes here, the more versatile bike, because bikes have the capability of doing multiple jobs. I think this was something you were saying earlier, Ev, about the rise of the all-road bike, semi-grav, grav-light, something like that. Anyway, grav-light. I don't know. No one knows what to call these
It's like
things.
tepid gravel. It's like Bud Light.
Yeah.
Cyclocross, not cyclocross, but
Cyclocross is dead.
basically it's like, a road bike that can fit really wide tires, and we're seeing road bikes with 40mm wide road tires these days, so that makes them more capable. So are people going to buy just one bike that can do multiple different jobs, take them in different directions, do more terrain, or are people more influenced by what I really regret having to say this, but what the marketing will direct us to.
Didn't take long.
Yeah, and what the tribes dictate in terms of if you're a triathlete, then do you need a tri bike, or if you're a racer on the road, do you need an aero bike? If you're a mountain biker, do you need a full susser? My goodness, the facial expressions in here are just about to explode. So, I don't know. And this was driven by quite a few of our clients who have come in as well recently, who, some of them wanted specifically a bike that could do both gravel, road duties, just with a swap of wheel set. And it's possible, so we're going to build her bike. Other people have come in with particular views around what their bike should be, but maybe come out with a completely different idea of what their bike should be. So we want to discuss, what should we want out of our bikes? Is there one bike to rule them all? Can we do everything on one bike? Should we, or should we go back to being very specific about our different bike setups? Mr. Walton, I feel you have much to say. Do you want to go first?
Do you want to start by talking about your one bike to rule them all?
Which is the best bike in existence? It's the Brother Big Bro.
For you.
Just to let listeners know, we are not sponsored by a Brother, but we do seem to have
I will wax lyrical about that bike to anyone that will listen, and even people that don't.
Yeah, no, they make good bikes, don't they?
But if you think about that bike in particular and what I use it for and how it's set up, it's a big steel 29er mountain bike, hardtail with a rigid steel fork, which will maybe become carbon at some point.
The spring,
yeah,
so it can't
maybe.
because I'm going to force you to buy it.
But it's got big 50mm slick tyres, mud guards, and wide handlebars. I ride that bike everywhere.
It's the perfect commuter bike.
Yeah, but there's the point. I ride it on the road. If I fancy taking it off-road, I can. And if I wanted to, which I don't, I could put aero bars on it.
God.
And I could probably ride it in a triathlon.
Probably.
Not saying I should, but I could. If I put a suspension fork on it, I could race a cross-country race on it. Be heavy. Not saying I'd want to, but I could.
If it was flat-ish.
Yeah, flat-ish, British kind of course,
Yeah.
it'd be fine. So it is one bike that can do a multitude of things. Won't necessarily do them well, but it is quite versatile. So is there a possibility to have one bike that does everything? I think there is. You've just got to be appreciative of what its primary use case is and where you're potentially going to compromise. And are you okay with that?
There's a good word. Compromise. Because if you are looking for a single bike and that's going to be your only bike, yes, you want something that's as versatile as possible, has a wide range of usage case scenarios, but in order to do that, you are going to have to compromise in some way on how wide the remit of that.
Is,
so, Big Bro, right? Basically, rigid cross-country bike. You're probably not going to be doing triathlons on it.
No.
Right? You're not going to be doing crits on it. You're not going to do fast road rides, stuff like that, because those are not activities that you're interested in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You don't need to. You go up to the limitation of that bike, and that's fine. That suits you. Fine.
So if we talk about drop bar bikes, like you were saying way at the beginning, like we'll bring it back onto, back on task, because we've veered off in the first 5 minutes. Like the kind of the pattern or the trends that we see about road bikes or drop bar bikes being more capable, being able to fit wider tyres, like Pirelli are making like a 40mm slick, which I am all for, very, very much all for that. I think you can have one bike that does everything, or like covers most of the remit of, say, for instance, a drop bar bike and what you would do with that.
Yeah.
And I think it could do the majority of it pretty well. Once you get into like, very specific use cases, you might want to specialise, and you might want a very specific machine. But for the vast majority of us that are just blatting about on a weekend, I think having one bike that does everything pretty well makes sense.
And the people who are discovering this, in terms of the punters or our customers or anyone, probably are people who have already gone down that specific route of having a bike that's specialised in one particular discipline, and now are kind of going, for whatever reason, they're like, you know what, 3-4 bikes is a bit too much. Either they haven't got the room anymore to store them, or they moved somewhere smaller or something, or maintaining 4 bikes over one costs too much, or they've got other hobbies as well, like they've taken up skiing or something else, and suddenly you've got there's other crap you have to store in your house as well as bikes, or maybe they've had a kid, or maybe they've done, they've changed jobs and their situation's changed. All of a sudden it's like, it's not that, or maybe they've stopped doing triathlon and they've gone into TTs, let's say, or something just all of a sudden they just don't need all these different bikes.
Or if you're new and you're finding your way into cycling, if you're discovering what it is that you actually like to do, why not get something that covers lots of different things?
That's the
so
other side of the coin, isn't it? Or
Yeah.
you're coming from the other end where it's like there's too much choice,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you see this one thing and you're like, yeah, but that can do all of these different disciplines, so why wouldn't I get that?
I see it a bit like saddles. Like, we always get asked, like, so I know you've got 150 different saddles on the wall in front of me here, but so which one's the best one?
SMP.
We're also not sponsored by SMP, but Matt does have a
It's a bit like
genuine
it's a bit
fondness
like
for
walking
them.
into a bookshop and asking the
What's the best
person, what's the best book?
Yeah.
It's like, well, what do you like?
But
What
the-
genres do you
There is
enjoy?
like, there's probably like 5 different saddles which we use, 80% of the time, which gets 80% of the
Yeah.
results. Something. So
Well, an artist has 100 paintbrushes of different sizes, but they probably use 3.
Yeah.
The most. It's just nice to have the option.
But I think also, like, a versatile bike is not necessarily just a good bike based on the technical merits of it, like fitting wider tyres or having a bigger gear range or whatever it is. But it also, I'm seeing the geometries change as well. So you look like at the Crux, like Specialized Crux, and it's basically like an Athos like road machine, but the geometry is less aggressive. So it's slightly higher stack, slightly shorter reach. I think it's got a slightly lower bottom bracket, so a bit more
Lower
stable.
or higher?
I think.
Wouldn't it have a higher bottom bracket for an off-road bike?
Well, that's the thing. I think with the Crux, they've decided to keep it low.
Oh, because you're going to put bigger tyres on, so it's going to raise anyway.
Yeah,
is it?
and then but then you can keep the centre of gravity lower as well, a bit more stability. The wheelbase is a little bit longer. So all in all, a more, I guess, a more stable bike, a more predictable bike, which will kind of work in more situations than just a race situation.
Yeah.
But you could you can put skinny tyres on it, and by all accounts it will be.
I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, one bike with 2 wheel sets is cheaper than 2 bikes.
Yeah, but is that, will people buy that? Is that what people want to buy? Is versatility a good enough selling point where they're like, if for example you didn't live in London in a 1-bedroom flat and you had room for 2 bikes, like would you buy?
I've got a 1-bedroom flat. I've still got 6 bikes.
Yeah. So we all.
But then I think you're coming. It's logic versus emotion, then, isn't it?
There's a weird dynamic, because it's like there's the gravel explosion, right? And all of a sudden that was like, oh well, aero's gone out the window. We don't need to worry about that anymore. Yeah. It's all about big tyres. It's all about rolling resistance. It's all about, well, no, I'm getting to that. So it's all about rolling resistance. It's all about tyre pressure, blah, 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 and wider bars and flared bars and all that. And then all of a sudden, what did we have? The new UCI Gravel World Champs, where all of a sudden all the roadies came in and were like, yeah, but I'm basically going to ride a cross bike with like 33 mil tyres, and I'm going to smash it because they have the ability to be able to ride bikes, road bikes, basically.
Greg Van Avermaet said that he got like properly destroyed at Gravel Worlds. Oh no, was it Unbound? Unbound, yeah.
Yeah, but that's because his career is over.
Well, he was on the wrong bike. He needed to drop bar mountain bike.
Exactly, yeah. That's different. That's different.
That's different again.
Yeah. But we're looking at, you're looking at the person who won the Gravel World Champs, pretty much riding his cyclocross bike.
Yeah, true.
Right, with not that big tyres or whatever, and smashing everybody out of the park. And all of a sudden, because they're going at much higher speeds, suddenly everyone starts talking about aerodynamics again. They're like, oh, you have to be aero, and everyone's riding gravel bikes and big. They want wide rims and big slicks.
Is that just a sign that bikes are just getting more and more versatile? Like you can put drop bars on a mountain bike, and you can put, I don't know, flat bars on a cross bike, and
you can do both those things, and they have been doing both those things since the advent of those disciplines.
Yeah, that's
true.
And
there's a reason that none of those things have ever really stuck, because eventually people are like, oh, actually, all you're doing is taking a bike that's really versatile and narrowing its versatility to a specific event.
Yeah.
Like even the guy that won, was it Unbound? What was it? Where he was on a drop bar?
I don't think it was
bike?
Unbound, but
no,
I think
it was
something else.
Leadville 100.
Leadville, yeah, right.
Spencer.
So even he was like, that was just for that event.
Yeah.
Like if it was anything, if there was like more complex terrain or something, he would have gone for flat bars, obviously, because he's a mountain biker. He knows what's good for him. He can ride a bike, so he understands that. It's just very, very specific usage case scenario.
Yeah, that's always been like the case for like pro riders.
We have that luxury as a pro rider to choose your specific. Like if you're a sports car driver, like racing driver, you don't. If it starts to drip with rain, you consider, oh, we might switch from the slicks to the intermediate tyres or rain tyres or whatever. You have that because you've got a whole team around you, and you've got all these resources. Whereas we're talking about us, regular people who don't want to be changing bits and pieces on our bike every time we go out. We're not looking at the weather. We're like, I want to just leave my house. It doesn't matter whether it rains, whether it's sunny, whether I decide to jump onto that bridle path, or if I'm going to go on the road, or any of these things. I just want to not have to worry about any of that. Just ride my bike, and if the terrain, whatever terrain I come upon, I can deal with it.
Yeah, because we were lamenting the loss of the winter bike, weren't we? Because people basically just go out on their, $6,000 Canyon now.
No, mate, they go on Zwift.
Yeah, they don't even go outside anymore.
What have you seen the bikes that come in here, which are just covered in crap?
Yeah.
And people have said, they're either on Zwift or
Or
they just go out on their
they
one
destroy
bike.
their bikes. And it only takes I think it only takes one winter on your 7-8 grand.
I mean,
pride and joy.
You've had a couple of tarmacs in here repeatedly for many different issues.
Yeah.
Just because they just keep riding.
They're not bikes. They're not made for it. They're thoroughbred. They're race bikes. They're not designed to be ridden in crappy conditions. If you do ride your bike in crappy conditions, and you're racing some spring classic or something, and you end up or Paris-Roubaix, and you end up completely covered in mud, and so does your bike. Where does that bike go as soon as you finish the race? It goes into the mechanic's truck, and it gets completely stripped and cleaned and everything. We don't do that with our bikes. We get home, we're soaked, we're tired. Bike gets shoved to the side. It's dirty. It just dries. All the mud dries in the corridor. You just throw it in the pile. You go and have a shower, and then you eat some chicken, and you fall asleep.
You don't, mate. You get handed a kid. So where have you been for the past 4 hours?
Yeah, exactly. There's no time to and then the next time got to take my bike out again. Oh, I should probably clean it, shouldn't I? I haven't got time.
Right,
bit of lube on top of the mud that's on the chain, and then you go out and you completely destroy your bike, and all of a sudden a winter bike does make sense, but you haven't got space for a winter bike and a 10 grand race bike, so what do?
You buy the winter bike.
You buy the winter bike, or
bring back the Kinesis Race Light.
The Kinesis Race Light, the one bike that you have.
With Tiagra.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you've completely destroyed my theory that bikes are going to become more versatile and people are going to buy one bike. But
what I'm saying is all of those things that happen lead to people realizing, I'm riding the wrong bike for the activities that I'm doing.
You need to be smart about the one bike that you do buy.
Exactly.
All right.
So we're not completely destroying your argument. We're just picking it apart.
It's just what is your one bike? If your one bike is going to be your jewelry, pride and joy, go and live somewhere sunny, and hot and dry, where you never have to worry about going in, riding in terrible conditions, and then you can have a spangly bike. But here, you just got to buy a steel gravel bike.
Are you saying the UK should be a hotbed for bike purchasing just because we live in a crappy environment?
Well, so it's going to be plus and minuses, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I think a lot of people are going to realise, I probably want maybe a metal bike. It's cheaper, easier to maintain. You don't cry when it gets damaged. A couple of wheel sets, one for the road, one for gravel or off-road, whatever. The position's the same when you get on the bike. You don't have to worry about measuring it up because you've already done it. And,
Yeah, at this time of year, I am not reaching for anything that does not have mudguards on it, unless I'm riding mountain bike. But or a gravel bike, a pure gravel bike. But anything on the road it has to have mudguards, and I'm not taking mudguards on and off, and it's got to be full mudguards because I'm not a dick.
You two and your mudguards.
Yeah.
Pro tip: put the long flap at the front, keep your feet dry.
Sod whoever's behind you.
Exactly.
The whole reason for having long mudguards is to protect the person behind you.
No, mate, I want my feet dry.
Group riding's for noobs. We don't do that. Once you wise up, you realise, I don't want anyone else near me.
Also, if you're at the back, it don't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. Put some glasses on. But going back to my point, the negative side of it for the industry is all of a sudden people just want one bike. You can't sell them more than one bike. You can't say, hey, you need this for that, you need that for that activity and this for that activity. So you get people to buy 3 or 4 bikes. They only want one. What are you going to do?
Well, I don't know. It would sell them more wheel sets.
Well, yeah,
So
that's
there's always
what I would
something
do.
to
That is
sell them,
definitely
isn't
what I would
there?
do. Yeah.
So, we've got a customer who's in the process of transitioning away from 3 bikes into just kind of one bike, and she just wants this one bike that can swap wheel sets to deal with gravel and road. And yeah, interesting point you made about the position stays the same. So I think for the kind of off-road riding that she's going to be doing, it's probably not going to be so technically challenging that it's going to be that different from her road position.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you have this one bike, and I guess having one bike requires you to have the ability to change positions potentially. You know, if you're doing some gravel, maybe you want your bars a little bit higher, so you can just put a spacer underneath it. Does that become like an important part of that choice, particularly when we live in the age of integrated handlebars, cables?
I have something to say, but do you want to?
Do you want to say it before I say it?
No, I don't know what you were going to say. You say it.
You go.
No, I might surprise you.
Go on, then.
Might surprise you. What I was going to say. Well, what was I going to say? I was going to say that maybe this customer in particular, but also anyone, if you've only got the one bike and you dial in your position, maybe you won't need to change it because you will train yourself into that position, right? And you'll be used to it. Yeah. And also, there's another thing that probably not the thing you were going to say.
No,
I was going to say
the exact opposite.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Go on. Say your thing, and I'll do my second point.
Well, the thing, if you have one bike, that bike better be adjustable.
Oh yeah. Well, there's that too. Yeah.
Because if your body changes or your preferred riding discipline changes, and you want to specify within the realms of that one bike, then yeah, if you've got an integrated cockpit and your cables run through your headset bearings, and you need a PhD in whatever to change the height of your stem, then good luck.
Yeah.
That's what got me excited about the Crux, because it is essentially a normal bike.
Yeah.
It's got a threaded bottom bracket that you can take in and out easily. It's got
if you've got the right tool.
Everything requires tools. So it's got a round seat post. It's got round steerer tube. It's got puts normal bars and stem.
Actually, 2 points. One in response to you, which is, I think it's because I come from the mindset of the bike is the bike,
set and forget.
I will adjust myself to deal with different terrain on that same position, right? So the other thing was winter bikes. They're the bikes that everybody doesn't worry too much about. They've spent money on the bike fit for their pride and joy. Comes into winter, they don't want to spend the same money to get exactly the same position. So it's a bit of an afterthought. And yet, it's the more important bike because you're riding it in worse conditions. You're less comfortable to begin with, so you would want that to be the really dialed-in bike, right? You're less likely to change the crank length, let's say, on the winter bike, because you don't want to spend the extra money, and you know it's going to get dirty and get damaged and all that kind of thing. So your winter bike, which is the one that arguably is more important for you to be really dialed in with the fit, is the one that you compromise.
Well, that's why we got you on this podcast.
We've had this conversation before when we were talking about commuting.
Yeah.
Like, you spend an inordinate amount of time on your commuter bike compared to your Sunday best bike. And yet,
and what did I say? When I came in this morning? What was the conversation we had this morning? When I walked in, and I was like, I rode my commuter bike the other day without a backpack.
Yeah, and it felt all right.
It felt so good.
Yeah.
And yet you don't. That's not how you ride your commuter bike. You just stuff a big heavy bag. Like my dad, when he used to work before he retired, he would drive around this car, and most of his job was driving around, being an engineer on location. So he'd have to drive around all the time. It's a company car anyway, so it didn't matter. But like, mate, that thing was stuffed full of stuff and tools and what have you in the back. And it's like he's driving this thing around the whole time. I'm like, you'll save a ton on fuel if you actually just picked and choose. I mean, I know what it's like because if you do that kind of location work, you want to make sure that you've got everything just in case you need it.
Yeah.
Like you've got your 150 saddles just in case you need one.
Just in case.
But you wouldn't really want to carry them all around on your back. But people do the same thing with their commuter backpack. Like stuffed full of crap that they probably don't need.
Yeah.
But just in case. It's like cyclists that take way too many tools in their like little oversized saddlebag. When you don't need quick links. God's sake,
there's a guy in the bike shop who shall remain nameless. But like, I looked at his kind of his daily backpack. He has a mission workshop backpack. It's huge.
Yeah.
Like and he had a freaking chain whip in there.
Yeah,
it's
right.
like, you ride a single speed bike.
How's he going to take his cog off? Swap his cog. He'll stop at the lights halfway on his commute and be like, "Oh, do you know what? Legs are a little fatigued.
There's a hill coming up.
I think I might change my cog." Yeah.
But going back to your point, Matt, so we should have adjustable bikes. Then.
Absolutely. They should have round seat post, 2-piece bar and stem, and it should take no longer than 40 seconds to change the height of your handlebars.
Ooh, I like that. It's very specific.
I don't know why I've come up with that, but in my head.
Is that the gold standard?
Yeah.
I want to do that test now. Can you change your handbars in 40 seconds? If anyone can.
Give someone a tarmac and be like, go for it, mate.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, 40 days.
Yeah.
And
Here's a bleed kit.
Yeah. But that's the point. It's like if you've got one bike,
Yeah.
you want it to be adjustable, in my head.
Yeah.
Like, because your body will change. That is a guarantee. And you might want to get more specific, and you might ebb and flow with what you ride at different times of the year. So you might do more road riding in the summer, and you might find that you can get into a different position than you can in the winter. So yeah, whereas you had winter bikes, you might have 2 different positions on your winter bike, and versus your summer bike. If you've got one bike, like, you know, I have one drop bar bike, and I want to be able to tinker with it.
Yeah.
You know, if I want to be able to change the reach, it's just a case of whipping a stem off and putting a different stem on. Takes a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing, that it allows you to be able to actually tune into your fit and your body and what's happening to your body. Then you can choose between Ev's method of like, okay, I've got my position, I'm going to adapt my body around it.
Ride yourself in.
Or, you know, maybe I've had too many mince pies over Christmas and I just want to raise the saddle up, handlebars up a little bit and adapt into that until, you know, I feel better, and then I can move back into a more performance-orientated position, maybe.
And I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but having the option is the point, I think. Because I agree with you to a certain extent that you do need to, you know, you need to put
Learn
the
the
work.
position.
Well, you
learn
know,
the position.
I'd kind of say, like,
Yeah.
from my perspective, or back with the whole racing thing and everything, and I just like all the like fast training rides and stuff like that. It's like you don't want to go through winter in a, dare I say it, easier position, because when you get to the spring and you get on your bike that's a little bit longer, a little bit lower, a little bit more extreme, you're going to
Within reason,
within
I would
reason.
say.
I mean, we're
Like
talking
putting 10 mil under your stem.
Yeah, we're
for
talking
winter,
like-
probably all right.
yeah. I mean, 5 mil will makes a massive
Well, it depends how
difference.
sensitive you are.
Oh,
yeah.
me, like 2 mil, 1 mil makes a huge
No,
difference.
but like the point is
A
that
backpack
have the
with
option,
almost nothing in it makes a difference.
and then you've got choice.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's the whole point. Whereas if your bike doesn't give you necessarily the option to do that easily, then you're limiting the possibilities.
This was the whole thing, going around all summer with a 10 mil spacer on top of your stem because you didn't want to cut the steerer flush. And you're just looking at that thing the whole time thinking, oh, just think about winter when that goes back underneath the stem. You know?
I look at that and go, I've made a good decision.
Yeah,
because I'm not going to have to buy a new
But
fork.
you know what people are like. They're just sitting in the cafe drinking their, oat latte, looking at their
Is that what you
bikes
have?
going, that's what I have. every day, yeah." And they're just looking at their bikes going, I should really slam it.
Why?
Because people forget that bikes don't look anything like they look when you're sitting in a cafe when you're sat on it and actually riding it. Nobody's looking at your stem.
So
your saddle height.
what do we think about Colnago then? Because they have.
What do we actually think?
But it's a really interesting example of they have now gone and made a dedicated race bike with the clear intention of winning the Tour de France with old Poggy, and they've made a bike for him. It's a new aero bike. It looks wild. It looks crazy. Obviously, for UCI reasons, they've made it available to buy. But do they really want to like sell it to people?
No, of course they don't.
We're going to see so many of those this year.
Yeah.
Oh God!
You
Really,
just you wait.
have you seen the geometry chart? Like even the stem lengths are all whack. And I was listening to, what was it, I think it was Escape Collective. They were doing a review or an interview with like the designers, and they were like, "Yeah, we've deliberately made all the stem lengths and bar measurements like weird to make people think about their fit, because this is a race."
Can I interject? Did you just call anyone that works at Colnago a designer? They're not designers, mate.
Someone had to come up with that
They
idea.
use crayons. For God's sake. That's
But
not
the
they
problem
don't know
with
what
that is that you're empowering people and giving people responsibility that they don't necessarily know what to do with.
Well, that's what we're trying to do with
it is. You
the
might say they're
adjustable
just
bike.
enabling people.
The winter bike, the
To spend
adjustable
money.
bike, the
Yeah, yeah.
versatile bike.
Look,
We want to give people that responsibility. But I guess the consequences aren't so as bad as, you know, if you get it wrong with a car.
But speaking honestly, that is a marketing tool just to get there, like they've been doing with the steel bike and the rim brake bike and all that. They just want to get Colnago in the cycling media, right? That bike is going to get ridden on maybe stage 2, 3, some flat stage, and then binned as soon as it starts going uphill.
I'd love it if everyone like just goes back to like the VRS.
Well, it's the Sagan Alley Sprint thing. Remember, they wanted to sell the Alley Sprint, the alloy version of the Venge, basically. So they got him to ride it. He did it on a couple of flat stages where it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it started going where he needed a bike that was like actually going to be able to climb on, he went back to the tarmac.
But I think in terms of like what Colnago have done with their brand is quite interesting because they've you know, regardless of what you think of it, we're talking about it. Yeah. Everyone's talking about it.
I was going to say one thing though.
What?
There's kind of like a cool factor has returned to Colnago instead of the old man bike. Now
it used to be a dentist bike.
Yeah, it used to be a dentist bike, and now it belongs to the Tour de France. Well, it belongs to Tadej Pogačar. Yeah. So it's nothing. They have done nothing. Colnago have done nothing apart from get some fucking crayons out. Bleep that out. But it's him. It's just him. It's just him. It's like the Tarmac wouldn't be one of the biggest selling bikes in the world ever without Sagan. Colnago's not going to sell bikes without Pogačar winning stuff, right?
I disagree. I think the audience would be different.
Mark my words. If Vingegaard starts winning stuff, Cervelo will start selling a lot more bikes, right? That's literally whoever wins. All the dentists are like, mate, I want that. Not realising it's like buying a Ferrari without an engine.
But the other interesting side of Colnago is that they released, as you said, all the steel bikes, like this Nuvo steel, a Tyre or whatever.
Which is inordinately expensive.
Yeah, but that's why they only made 20 of them.
They made 70 and they've completely sold out.
To collectors.
Yeah, like
if you ever see one of those things being ridden in the wild, I will eat my hat.
Richmond, bet you.
Probably, actually.
But
I'll make sure the hat's made of something like croissant.
You know, there is some kind of demand for like essentially an outdated bike.
Well, we all ride outdated bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had them,
they work.
if I had a lot of disposable income and I was into that sort of thing, I'd buy one. Just
no, you
I'd be like, I'd be like, can't.
You wouldn't be seen dead on a
No,
Colnago.
I'll tell you what I would buy. I would buy a Colnago from the 90s. That's what I'd buy. I'd buy if I wanted a rim brake race bike. I'd buy a Colnago from the 90s.
More of that, the people's bike, the bike that is going to work better for more people. And
we've talked about these naming conventions before, haven't we? Yeah. Endurance is like so many people just like as soon as you say endurance, they're like, I want something like more aggressive or whatever. Or if you say all road, they're like, that's a touring bike. That's like a Doors Galaxy. It's like they want the thing. So what they do is they make the bike, the main one. They kind of compromise on its geometry and the way that they design it so that it accommodates more, so it's more versatile. So now you've got supposed race bikes that can fit big, massive tyres, but they've compromised the geometry. But nobody can tell, because you can't tell by looking at it until you ride it. Yeah. And if you know what to look for, that you understand that having a bike that's capable of fitting 40mm tyres on a road bike compromises the geometry. Yeah. But you don't know.
You make an excellent point there of, well, does this conversation even matter? Because people aren't going to ride multiple different bikes and notice the difference between, you know, the thoroughbred race bike and the versatile bike and the gravel bike.
And you can't anymore because you don't walk into a showroom to buy a bike and sit on lots of different bikes and ride around. You just click a button on the Canyon website.
So, how did, buying a bike is literally like putting your finger in the air.
and the big mistake that I think most people make is they still read what manufacturers are writing on their websites, which is completely fabricated.
Well, what else are they going to read?
And then they repeat that, and then people they're just using that jargon and all that rubbish as if it's kind of like gospel. It's like, no, they just made it up just to make you want to buy the product. It's nothing to do with, they're all the same.
So I go back to the story of old Tony Cork, master bike fitter.
I'm sure they'll appreciate you calling him old.
Yeah, he's pretty old now. Sorry, Tony.
Tony doesn't listen to this.
Oh, we'll see him in a couple of weeks
Yeah,
and see
true.
what he thinks.
Send him a link.
But yeah, he did an experiment, Buck and the Do, where he wanted to figure out how important bike fit was. So he would, when you got a new customer in, you would send them out on, you know, a 10-gram bike with a terrible bike position, and then you know, a 2-gram bike with, you know, a good bike position for them, and see what they would come out with.
Let me guess.
Well, it's obviously it was a bike fitting podcast, so you know, the bike they had was cheaper and had a better bike fit. Came back and they were just, the customer was always like, yeah, this bike just feels amazing. This bike is, yeah, I want this bike. Yeah, the brakes on the other one felt a little bit better, but you know.
Did they then go away and just buy the expensive bike anyway? Because it was like,
Well, you know, my point was, in the face of not being able to test bikes and not really being able to know what a bike handles like and what the differences and nuances between bike geometry is, the best thing that you can do as a consumer is to make sure that your fit is good, that your body can operate well, it can generate good force, that you are comfortable, and that your bike is adaptable. So as you develop as a cyclist, then you can adapt around the bike and the bike can adapt around you. And that fit will make sure that you enjoy your bike riding. Like, despite, you know, whatever the bike looks like, you know, the most important thing that you can control as a rider is to, you know, make sure that your fit is right. And if you are a person who doesn't want to go and see a bike fitter and prefers to tinker on their own, then that's great. That's brilliant. Go and figure out what your bike fit is. But then, even more important, you need a bike that is adjustable, so you can figure out, you know, what your seat height is, where your saddle should be placed, what stem length you have, what bar width you need, what crank length you need.
this goes back to the one bike thing. You know, if the fit is good, that single bike is more versatile because you're able to ride, you're able to have more control because your fit is good.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess some of this stemmed from thinking back to when I started getting back into, or I started getting into bikes, and started out by trying to build my own bike, and then that raised all the questions of, well, what seat post do I need? What bar width do I need? And obviously, I made a lot of wrong choices, but I learned from that. And so, you know, that's like a journey that I feel like a lot of riders recently have been missing out on, because bikes have become, you know, like the modern car. Everything's hidden under the hood and you can't change anything. And the people come in and they don't even realise what they've bought. They don't realise that they can't change their handlebars. They don't.
What do you mean I need an app to index my gears?
Yeah.
Let's start.
So I'm starting this year with a bit of optimism.
I'm not.
It's because you've done some bike fitting already.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. I think let us know what you think about.
We're missing one vital question though.
Oh, one
So
question.
if you could only have one bike,
What would it
drop
be?
bars, what would it be?
Alloy crux.
Ooh,
I've said it. It's
Yeah.
out there now.
I think, yeah, it's got to be some kind of.
It's going to be a more, let's call it race-orientated gravel. Like, it's a gravel bike, but it doesn't have, it's not got clearance for like monster truck tyres, because that just compromises it.
What's monster
Geo.
truck?
Anything bigger than 38.
38.
Yeah. nobody in this
Controversial.
country, unless they live in
Have you been riding in
Outer
Essex?
Hebrides, Essex. You're telling me Essex roads need more than a 38?
Mate, Epping Road, terrible.
Yeah, but 38 is... Look, I've ridden it on 25s. Just fine. It's all about ability.
When your talent runs out, your tyre width increases. That is a matte fact.
Then Ev should be back on 19s then.
Mate, I might try it.
19 mil tops.
I think, yeah, well, this is, again, specific usage case scenario. If I go out on my race bike on 25s with very specific tyre pressures for a very specific route, you know, I'm riding that route. If I'm going somewhere I don't know, and, you know, like things
Where
might
do you
surprise
ever go
me.
other than the park?
What exactly, yeah. So if I was
Hackney
to
marshes.
if I was to
Yeah.
go back 10 years and actually where I would go out and ride like all sorts of things, then a gravel bike, something with slightly bigger tires would have been useful, because like you don't know, the old club days where it was like, why we got the Garmin, we didn't know what.
All right,
we didn't know how
if we
to
were
work
going
the
to
Garmin.
the Alps, then
Alps 25s, mate.
25.
My race bike, no problem.
So what we're saying is, for general use, a slightly toned down race bike with slightly wider tyre clearance is where it's at.
Probably,
So basically,
yeah, that would
a racy gravel bike.
a racy gravel bike. Yeah, I would.
Like it went a bit too far into mountain bike territory, and now it's coming back, right? It went so far because people were riding gravel bikes because they're fashionable, but what they actually wanted to do was kind of like single track and much more XC territory stuff.
Yeah.
And people still do that, and you can do that if you're not going particularly fast. You can get away with a lot, but for a lot of the typical club riders where they're doing, again, like you say, like crappy Epping roads, it's just it's mostly road, but our roads are not the same as roads in Mallorca or south of France. They're broken up. They've got potholes. There's all sorts. You never know if it's going to be wet leaves, bit muddy, gravelly, slippery. Just want something a bit more.
Yeah, the domain of gravel is so broad. It's, you can have everything and anything these days. Like, so one step below like a hardtail mountain bike is a drop bar mountain bike.
Well, there's also an interesting, maybe this is another podcast, but there's the relationship or the relative difference between sort of being on the right bike for the conditions or being slightly underbiked. And being slightly underbiked is more fun, put that in air quotes, because that's what it's all about. If you feel like you're a bit on the edge, a bit at the limit, having to take a few risks, not like crazy, like death-defying stuff, but just it's a bit more adrenaline inducing. Yeah. If I jump on my trail bike and I go and ride through Epping, I'm barely gonna feel
it's not challenging.
I might as well be on a bloody tractor, right? I'm not going to ride. That's not the bike for those conditions. If I just want to get from one side of the forest to the other, brilliant bike, But if I want to have some fun, I want to be slightly underbiked.
So we've come back to basically the same message that we always say: think about what you're doing. Think about your riding.
The moral of the story is the same as it is every week.
Ride your bike more, and you will
outside,
and you'll be a better bike rider.
Yeah.
Practice.
Yeah. Practice makes perfect.
If you don't practice, you can't just keep buying.
I learned over Christmas that practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress.
Oh. Is this in relation to eating?
Parenting.
Oh, parenting, that's different.
Yeah.
That's very different than eating. As a parent, you don't really get to eat.
No.
You get to watch a child eat.
And then eat leftovers.
Yeah, exactly. Stood by the sink. Just...
All right, so if... hopefully this has been useful for you.
Doubtful.
If you have any thoughts around what kind of bikes we should be riding, what trends are occurring in 2025, what would you like to see from the bike industry? We'd love to know.
What is your one bike to rule them all? Let us know.
Yeah, I want to know.
And not the bike you're riding currently. Come on.
Yeah.
Use your imagination. If you could change things about your bike, or if there's a bike that you're dreaming about, whatever you want, tell us.
Yeah.
And if you're serious about buying that bike, get fit first.
Of course.
Because you might be disappointed if you do buy that bike without making it an informed decision.
Exactly.
There we go. All right. See you in the next one, guys. Ta-da.
Bye.
If you've made it to the end of this episode, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, do leave us a rating or review, as this really helps other riders find our podcast too, and motivates us to keep making more episodes. Thanks for your support, and catch you on the next one.
Suffering from numb hands, tingling toes, and any other persistent discomforts when you ride? These are all signs that your bike fit could be improved. If you're bike fit curious, get in touch with Way or Matt by emailing info@foundation.fit or finding them on Instagram @FDN_bikefit. Finally, for all your bike servicing needs, custom dream bike or hand-built wheels, go to www.frequencycycleworks.com or find me on Instagram @frequencycycleworks. Until next time, keep on spinning.